Yesterday, Senator John Cornyn, the lead Republican negotiator of the Senate's bipartisan gun deal, reportedly said the 10 GOP senators who signed on to the bill's framework are, quote, rock solid when it comes to the strength of their support. But, big but, senators and Senate aides warn there's still a lot of work to be done before the legislation is actually drafted, and details are still being worked out. So what do we know so far about the proposal? Joining me now to talk about this and much more is Senator Josh Hawley of Missouri. He serves on 4 Senate committees, including the Senate Judiciary Committee and the Committee on Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs. Senator, welcome back to the program.
Thanks for having me. Great to be with you.
So what can you tell us so far about the conversations over this bipartisan proposal that addresses violence with guns?
Well, here's the thing, Tony. I mean, we're still learning about what is in this legislation. Of course, there's no legislation yet, as I understand it. As you said just a moment ago, the text has yet to be written, and I'm going to want to read, of course, anything that is written before I agree to vote on it. But I have to tell you that I don't really like the framework. I mean, this, among other things, this framework incentivizes red flag laws. I've got major concerns about a lot of these red flag laws across the country. There's 16 of them around the nation. Most of them allow for firearms to be taken away from a defendant without him being present in court, without an attorney being present in court, without any adjudication of a crime having been committed. That's really, really concerning to me, and I, for one, would rather see funding going towards school security than going towards the red flag laws and trying to encourage states, indeed push states, to pass laws that I think have a lot of problems.
Yeah. And another one of the provisions, apparently, from the framework is that makes it more difficult for those in the age category of 18 to 21 to purchase firearms. Now, you know, there are certainly probably some issues there, but at the same time, we have the same people pushing to restrict the rights of those in that age group to purchase guns, but they're saying kids even younger than that should be able to engage in radical surgeries in this whole transgender movement. So there's some inconsistency in how they see the ability of people under the age 21 to make decisions.
Yeah, that's very true, Tony. And the thing that really strikes me that is lacking from this package is any effort to go after criminals and to criminalize the kind of behavior with firearms violence that we're talking about. I mean, the federal government has crimes on the books against youth as part of a crime of violence, against felons possessing firearms. Why don't we increase the penalties for those crimes? Why don't we give prosecutors new resources to go after those crimes? That's what I do. I would increase the penalties. I would further criminalize this kind of behavior, the illegal behavior. We should be going after criminals, not law-abiding citizens, and that's my basic problem with this package.
Oh, I guess that's a very good approach, Senator. And one thing we could do is actually just enforce the laws we have. I mean, when you consider that we've had just in the last few weeks over 40 separate incidents of violent attacks against churches, pregnancy care centers, and other pro-life facilities by pro-abortion activists since the draft of the Supreme Court opinion was leaked. I mean, why are we not doing something? Why isn't the federal government, why isn't the Biden administration, the Department of Justice doing something to enforce current law?
Well, this is a great point, Tony, and whether it relates to crimes of violence that involve guns or, as you say, with these bombings, these arsons directed at pregnancy centers and pro-life care centers, and for the Justice Department to turn a blind eye, which is essentially what they've done. They're also turning a blind eye to the assassination attempt against Justice Kavanaugh. So far, the Attorney General still will not enforce the law that says you cannot picket or parade or intimidate a justice in order to try to get him or her to change their view on a case, their vote on a case. They're not enforcing that, and we see the consequences of this. So I'm with you. You know, we're in the middle of a major crime wave all across this country. Unfortunately, that crime is being directed increasingly against people of faith and those in the pro-life community, and this administration won't do anything about it.
Maybe the approach the Republicans should take is, look, we're not going to create any new laws until you learn to enforce the ones we have.
Yeah, and this is exactly why I say the right approach here is to give more resources to prosecutors. If resources are needed, let's give them to prosecutors to prosecute crimes. Let's take the crimes that are already on the books and make the sentences tougher. Let's get tough on the criminals rather than punishing law-abiding citizens.
Yeah. Senator, I want to switch gears a little bit, something you've been drawing attention to, and it is the Homeland Security Disinformation Governance Board. It appears that the Secretary of Homeland Security was not completely truthful when he appeared before the Senate recently.
Yeah, well, what he told us, Tony, was that this was just a working group, that this board wouldn't have any real operational authority, and that just turns out to be totally false. As a matter of fact, we now know because of whistleblower documents that were turned over according to statute and that Senator Chuck Grassley and I have made public. We now know that this board was planned for months. We know that it did have authority to set guidelines. It had authority to coordinate the government response. And we know what the misinformation, so-called, the government wanted to target, the Biden administration wanted to target. It was about vaccines. It was about people who have questions over election integrity. This is what the government wanted to go after, and they wanted to weaponize federal power to do it. It's very wrong. We need to have a full hearing with Secretary Mayorkas for him to explain why he misled the committee.
You know, that sounds more like something coming out of Russia and Vladimir Putin's administration. But, I mean, that's happening right here in the United States. The effort to silence and marginalize the voices of the opposition.
Well, and particularly what's disturbing about that is not only would they do that, Tony, and that's bad enough, but then admit to Congress about it and the American people to go out and say that, well, this board actually wasn't going to do anything. This board was only going to target foreign disinformation. We now know that's false. That is simply false, and they deliberately misled people about it. The whole American public, there ought to be consequences for that.
Yes, we need a disinformation board to govern the disinformation board. Senator Josh Hawley, always great to talk with you. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
You know, folks, it's a sad day, but we just can't trust what's coming out of this government. And we need to stay on top of it. We need to continue to elect men and women of deep conviction, like Josh Hawley, to be in Washington, D.C., exposing all of this.